events of that last week, we find plants strewn along the way that tell us the story of what happened during that last week. That's why we call them passion plants. Plants that tell the story. There's 3 of them. We looked at one last week, we'll look at another one tonight, and then we'll finish off on Sunday. Looked at palms, and we'll talk a little bit about that, what that symbolizes. Then there's thorns, and again, that's tonight, and then there are vines, and that will be Sunday. But tonight, we think about thorns. Think about thorns. What do the thorns tell us? Look at what it says in the verse on your sheet. Let's read it. It says, then the governor's soldiers took Jesus into the praetorium and gathered the whole company of soldiers around him. They stripped him and put a scarlet robe on him, and then twisted together a crown of thorns and set it on his head. What do the thorns tell us? I think they tell us a couple things. Thorns tell us how quickly things change, because if you remember, and the kids on Sunday will have palm branches and they'll wave them. On Sunday, they were waving palm branches because they believed that Jesus was going to come and make their life better. When they went to bed on Thursday night, everybody in Jerusalem, in the city, they would have no idea what would happen by the time they woke up. During that night, Jesus was arrested, and then he went to trial during the course of the night. So while they were asleep, all this stuff happened. Jesus got beat up pretty bad during the course of the night. When people woke up in the morning, they learned that he had been taken and arrested, and then that he was going to go to Pilate, and that Jesus was in a lot of trouble. And the people that had waved the thorns, the palm branches earlier in the week, were really confused because they thought that Jesus was going to be a very powerful king. And powerful kings don't get put under arrest. And powerful kings don't get taken and get beaten up. And so they were very confused, and that's why on Friday, so they went to sleep and they felt like everything was fine. They woke up, and then everything happened so fast that day that Jesus was condemned to be killed. And he was put on a cross at 12 o'clock, and he died by 3. And on that Friday, many of the people that waved palms shouted for the Romans to crucify him. Why'd they do that? I don't know. Doesn't it tell us how quickly things change? You know, when Jesus didn't bring the kind of stuff that they wanted him to bring, their impression of him changed quickly. I think that's what thorns tell us. That you can go from Palm Sunday to Good Friday in less than a week. I think that thorns tell us as well about suffering. I have a rose bush in front of my house, 2 little rose bushes, and last year there were hardly any roses on them. I didn't know what was happening. Then I looked really close, and there was a bunch of bugs on the rose bush. So I had to get some stuff to spray the rose bush, and then I had to cut some of the stuff off. You know, there were like branches that were dead. So I cut them. Have you ever tried to cut a rose bush back? You ever tried to do that every touch a rose bush? It's the thorns, and so it's really hard to take out. I remember when I was in upstate New York. This was in about 25 years ago or so. And we built a house there, and there were thorn apple trees. And these were trees with thorns on them. And the thorns on the rose bush, they're really little. You ever see how big thorns are on a rose bush? The thorn apple trees, these thorns were pretty good size. And when we cut those down, they were really hard to pick these things up because you'd get stuck. I think the thorns that we find that when they wrap that crown of thorns around Jesus' head, they're not this big, those thorns, and they're not even this big. They're 2 to 3 inches long, and they're like curved. And so when they make a crown out of these things, that hurt a lot when they put that on his head. I think that's what thorns tell us. It talks about suffering. But more so, I think it's about humiliation, because the reason why they put that hat on him is because they were making fun of him. They were mocking him. What they had done, they had put like a scarlet robe on, like a king would wear, and then they put a staff in his hand like a king would have, and they put a crown on his head, the crown of thorns, and then they made fun of him, and they spit at him because they said, boy, you're not a king. you're getting beat up, and you're not powerful, and you don't have a lot of people that are even here. Everybody's asleep, and they don't. So I think it stands for humiliation. I think it stands for the curse. It stands for, and that's what we'll talk a little bit about being cursed. Thorns remind us of God's curse. How many of you know that is spring coming, that there's going to be thistle? You know what a thistle is? Thistle. Canadian thistles are so irritating. If you ever walk around outside and you have bare feet on. If you took your clothed feet off and put your bare feet on, you know that when you step on those, they're pointy. You ever step on a thistle? How many ever stepped on a thistle? Yeah, you step on those things and you try to get them out of the ground, and you have to use that stuff, and you pick them out, and they're irritating and they grow. Why are there thistles? Well, like thorns. I think roses are great. I don't understand why a rose has to have thorns on the... But look what this verse says. It's in the Bible. Look what it says. Thorns remind us of God's curse to Adam, he said, because you listened to your wife and ate from the tree about which I commanded you, you must not eat of it. Cursed is the ground because of you. Through painful toil, you will eat of it all the days of your life. It will produce thorns and thistles for you. So whenever you see a thorn on a rose bush or a thistle on the ground, what you might think about is, boy, when God says something, it really happens. So God cursed the ground, and he said, because there's a curse, thorns and thistles, and that's why there's thistles in our yard, I guess. And that's why there's thorns on thorn bush, because God said, okay, since there's disobedience, there's a curse, and when God curses something, it stays cursed. God doesn't lie. What he says comes to pass. He says God places a curse on anyone who does not do everything he commands. Look what it says. All who rely on observing the law are under a curse. For it is written, cursed is everyone who does not continue to do everything written in the book of the law. The book of the law is kind of like the Ten Commandments. Now, here's what it says. Cursed is everyone who does not continue to do everything written in the book of the law. What they say, if you're trying to make God happy by keeping the Ten Commandments, you're cursed if you don't do everything written in the book of the law. You're cursed. So I have a couple questions. I shout, if I do mostly good things, I'm not real bad, I do mostly good things, does that mean I don't have to worry about God's curse, right? Give me an answer. If I do mostly good things, I don't have to worry about God's curse, do I? What does it say? Well, look at the verse. Look what it says. Cursed is everyone who does not continue to do everything written in the book of the law. So that means if I do most things, and I'm a pretty good person, but I don't do everything, I'm cursed if I don't do everything. What else it says? Well, if I don't do really bad things, I'm going to ask you another question. If I do mostly good things, but what if I don't do really bad things? If I don't do really bad things, I don't have to worry about God's curse, right? Wrong? But wrong? Wait a minute, I have to look at that verse again. What does it say? Oh, cursed is everyone who does not continue to do everything written in the book of the law. So if I do mostly good things, but not everything, I'm cursed. If I don't do really bad things, but still I'm cursed. That's what it says. Cursed is everyone who doesn't do everything. Does that mean that all of us are cursed? Are you cursed? Not anymore. We'll talk about that. Have all of us been cursed at one point? I think so. That's what it says. If we do anything wrong at some time in our life, that we are at that point under God's curse. Now, what we're going to find out is how we can get out from under God's curse. But what we need to know is that that's kind of where we are, and that's what God has to help us to get out of. Okay. So those two things, now we're going to look at the third thing. Jesus took God's curse on himself. Jesus took God's curse on himself. Let's read that verse. If a man guilty of a capital offense. A capital offense is something that means that you get the death penalty. It's a really serious thing wrong. If a man is guilty of a capital offense, is put to death, and his body is hung on a tree, you must not leave his body on the tree overnight, because anyone who is hung on a tree is under God's curse. I'll tell you why I put that in there. The people who wanted to kill Jesus had a problem. And here's what their problem was. How can they kill somebody who was so popular with the people? So on that Thursday night, when the soldiers went and they found Jesus all alone with 12 disciples with him, so there was just Jesus and 12 disciples, and there was a bunch of Roman soldiers. I have a question. Why didn't they just kill him on Thursday night if they wanted to get rid of him? Why didn't they just kill him on Thursday night? Why did they do all that stuff? I think there's an answer. You see, if they just killed Jesus, the people would still think that he was sent from God. So what they had to do is they had to kill Jesus in a way that would cause people to believe that he wasn't sent by God. Now, how in the world were they going to do that? Jesus did all kinds of miracles. How could they kill him in such a way that the people, within the course of a day, would think, boy, yesterday I thought he was from God, but I know he's not from God. You know what they had to do? They had to have him crucified. Look at this verse again. It says, anyone who is hung on a tree is under God's curse. They call crucifixion being hung on a tree. That's how they describe the death. So here's what the people who wanted to kill Jesus, here's what they figured out. If we can get Jesus crucified, then the people that are looking will have to say, wow, he did a lot of good things, but it says right here, cursed is everyone who is hung on a tree. So everyone who is killed the way Jesus is being killed is under a curse. And that's exactly what happened. They had Jesus crucified. So when people were there and they were looking, they were thinking, well, that's really strange. The fact that he's up there dying like he's dying means that he's under God's curse. Wow. He was a pretty good person. I guess he didn't come from God. I guess he didn't do what God wanted him to do. I thought he was. That's what they thought. That's why they had to kill him like they killed him. And again, the reason why Jesus did this is he took our curse so that we wouldn't have to. But it says when we rely on what Jesus did, we are no longer under God's curse. But it says, Christ redeemed us from the curse of the law by becoming a curse for us. For it is written, cursed is everyone who is hung on a tree. Fear Factor. I don't really like that show. You ever watch Fear Factor? You have to do really gross things. Really, really disgusting things. I saw this thing where they put a bunch of bugs in a blender, and they turned the blender on, and then they crunched up all these bugs and made a drink out of them. And then they poured this bug drink into a glass. And part of what these people had to do as part of the show, they had to drink that glass of squished up, mushed up bugs. Imagine that you were on that show and you had to drink a glass of bugs. And you don't like to drink bugs. I don't like to drink bugs. But imagine that if I came on that show too and you had to drink a bug, there was a glass with your name on it filled with bug juice. And you said, I don't want to drink this glass of bug juice. And I took it and I said, I'll drink it for you. I don't like bug juice either. If I drank it down, that's kind of, in a way, it's doing what Jesus did for us. The night before Jesus was killed, he talked about the cup of God's wrath. And because we're all cursed, because none of us have done everything that God wants us to do, we're under a curse. It's like we have a glass full of really nasty stuff with our name on it. Jesus called it the cup of God's wrath. Jesus never did anything wrong. We've done things wrong. Each of us has a glass with our name on it. We haven't done everything God wants us to do. What Jesus did, he took the cup of God's wrath and he drank it in our place. The cup of punishment, what it means when you are suffering punishment from God. Jesus drank cups that weren't his. Well, you know whose cup he drank from, don't you? You know whose cup Jesus drank from? Yours. The cup with your name on it? Cup with my name on it? Mike Gaudette, nasty stuff in there. He said, I'm going to drink that for you. And he experienced punishment and suffering. Your name was on the glass too. And that's why he came. To take the curse that was supposed to fall on you, and he took it on himself because he loves us and cares for us. You know what? Say if I take that glass, maybe that bug juice glass. I'm going back to that, I know it's gross. If there's one glass for you, and I drink it, and is there any stuff for you to drink? You know what happens with a curse? When a curse is spoken to somebody, that curse only has power until the point where it accomplishes what it was for. So, if God says you're under a curse, and Jesus takes that curse to himself, do you have to worry about God's curse anymore? See, a curse only has power until when somebody takes the curse that was against you is powerless now. And that's kind of what Jesus did. He took the curse and he experienced it for us. Let me ask you some questions. Have you done wrong things? Do you believe that God sent his son, Jesus, to take your curse? And if you believe that God sent his son to take your curse, are you under a curse now? Are you under a curse at all? You've done things wrong. Are you under a curse? Is God going to be mad at you? Are you going to be judged? See, what it means, thorns tell us, is that Jesus experienced the curse for us, so now, if we believe all that stuff, there's no curse for us. How do we know that? How do we know that? It's because of what he says. You might feel like a person to whom bad things happen. I think all of us, things happen that we really don't like, and we might think, well, boy, God really cursed. I'm really cursed. That's not true. If you believe that Jesus took the curse of God for you, then you are not cursed. What is true, you're blessed. When we rely on what Jesus did, we are under God's blessing. It says, he redeemed us in order that the blessing given to Abraham might come to Gentiles like you and me through Christ Jesus, so that by faith we might receive the promise of the Spirit. When God just doesn't take the curse, he extends a blessing. And what that means, good things are ahead of you if you have Christ in your life. Say, how do you know? When God blesses or curses, he always does what he says. If God says Jesus took your curse, Jesus took your curse. If God says that you are going to be blessed, you're going to be blessed. Why? Because God always does what he says. That's why there's thorns and thistles in your yard. That's why there's thorns on rose bushes. When God curses or blesses, he always does what he means. And when we are blessed then, we will be blessed. Now, everything in this life might not be fine and good and happy, but good is ahead of us. We're going to experience communion now. What we're going to do is come up, and here's what we do when we take communion. We think. And here's what I'd like you to do. We're going to listen to a song. I want you to think about the fact that you don't have to worry about a curse because Jesus worried about your curse for you. And because he did, you are going to be blessed. And what this table represents, when we go to be with God in heaven, he says it's going to be a great banquet. It's going to be like, heaven's going to be like a great place. And so this is kind of what we think of. It's kind of like we think about, boy, imagine what this is going to be like 100 years from now. Being with God face to face, and there's no crying, there's not anything bad. That's what we think of when we think of this table. And we think of what God did to allow us to be able to go there. That God sent his son to take the curse so that we could experience his blessing. During the course of the next song, we're going to listen to it and then come up, take the elements, think about what Jesus did and thank him for doing that. And then we'll close with another song.
To stand and join us.
Let's pray. I'm just going to give you a minute. Keep your head bowed. The reason why Jesus came is to enter into a relationship with you. With you. Every one of you. It's Good Friday. And think about what Jesus did. I want you to think about why he did it. He really wants a relationship with you. You're going to spend eternity being able to talk to him. That can start now. In silence. Thank him for the love and for taking the curse so that you could be blessed. Thank him for that. Thank him that God's blessing rests on you. You might never make $1 million. Your family might not be picture perfect. I'll tell you what, in 100 years, you're going to be in a really good place. A really, really good place. With blessings that you can't even imagine. God cares for you that much. He really does. Talk to him. Thank him. Tell him, God, I want to know you better. You talk to him and then I'll close this in prayer. It's Good Friday. You talk to him personally in silence. God, I really am grateful for how much you care about us. We do wrong things. We don't do what you ask us to do, and we do what you tell us not to do. And you tell us that a curse comes on anybody who does that. And you mean business. But you created a way that your son could take the curse that had our name on it, and now the glass with the curse and our name on it, it's gone, it's drunk, Jesus, you finished it. And now we don't have to worry about being cursed. I want to thank you for how much you love us. For the future that's ahead of us. Blessing is going to rain down on us. Maybe not a downpour now, but in 100 years it'll be a downpour. And this side of that, would you help us to live for you, Jesus? Would you help us to know your love and so we would obey you and serve you? And we really do look forward to being with you person to person, because you really love us, I guess. You really want us to be there. You're going to, when we get there to be with you, you're really going to like to see us. You like us that much. That's hard to believe, but it's true. You never would have come and taken our curse if you didn't love us and like us so much. So would you help us to know how much you love us so that we could love you more in return? In Jesus' name, amen.